Welcome to Wake the Bear Radio with your host, Brandon Johnson, Chris Hurst, and Ron Powers. All right. Welcome to another episode of Wake the Bear Radio. Good to see you, Chris.
I know, it's just the two of us. What's up with that?
I don't know. Brandon decided to take a vacation out in Hawaii, and so we're happy for him. We'll live vicariously through him as he sits out in the sun. And we have rain coming tonight or tomorrow out in Northern California, the Bay Area, Santa Cruz. But sometimes you have to take a vacation because all this stuff that's happening in the news cycle and around the world, that could really drag you down sometimes if you focus in on that. And sometimes you just need to take a step back. And I think it's really good that he's doing that. And it's probably good that we all think about doing that as well. Take a little time, smell the roses, spend time with the family, spend time in prayer. So yes, definitely.
Yeah, what do you do for decompression when you're feeling it and you're going, I got to get out? Or what do you do?
Well, I went 2 days ago. I went out kite surfing on the California coast, and it was just really nice. The first time in 3 weeks. And 3 weeks may not sound like a long time for a lot, but I usually go at least weekly, and so it just felt really good just to get out again. And it was, we had so many storms and stuff in the past several weeks, so it's really nice just to have some sunshine, although still cold. But it was just really refreshing. And I think of Jesus when he, sometimes he had crowds are pressing in on him, and he's just like, I need to get in the boat, get a little distance. I think sometimes that might have been his go-to place. I know that he spent much time with the Father in prayer. But what about you? What do you do to decompress?
Well, I love to get my feet on the ground. And I love to break a sweat, and I like a good climb. So I find where there's some hills and I go out and get in nature. And then I have a blast I've got a good eye of finding living things while I'm out. So I take little videos, and I've got 4 grandchildren. So I'll send them a video of the deer or the turtles or the ducks or the salamanders that I find. Today I sent them, there were these frogs in this pond that were the size of a dinner plate. They were bullfrogs.
Wow.
And I've tried to sneak up on them before and get some shots. So I was stealth today, and I got them and sent those off. It's like I'm the science teacher for my grandkids. So that just gives me a lot of joy, and it keeps me connected with my family.
Oh, absolutely. That's awesome. Very cool. Yeah. Nature, God's creation has something special. I don't get that when I'm walking down a cement alleyway, like I get, although I know there's nice places, whether it's be Paris or whatever, I'm sure it's nice, but there's something about nature. And I don't know if the body just reacts to the creation that we were made a part of, but
I wanted to share this picture that a friend of mine had sent me. She's up in, it was on her Facebook page. And she has a place up in Tahoe, and she caught, I don't know if it's a brown bear or black bear, what kind of bear it is, but she caught it out in the snow. And I was thinking, don't they hibernate in the winter? Because we're wanting to wake these bears,
That's right.
Basically, I thought, it's springtime. They're supposed to come out. So we've got some stuff where we want to wake our bears here in California today. And so we got some news. Hopefully it'll shake some people awake. And we have some things from the Trump rally that was Waco, Texas this weekend. And Trump released some ideas and solutions. And he reminds us where we are, where we were 2 years ago with him, and where we can be again if we reelect him. And then there are some other news items that happened. And I know we had some derailments again this week. So lots happened. And what we want to do is make people aware many of these things are not just coincidences. We need to pay attention and realize we're in a cosmic battle. and it's good against evil, and it is a spiritual battle as well as a physical battle. So
Absolutely. It is. It is. So what do you want to cover first? We could cover, you want to cover the Trump rally?
sure, we can go there.
Yeah.
We certainly can. Um, I know that Matt Gaetz was there, and he was part of that Trump rally. It was in Waco, Texas. I believe it was on the tarmac at their airport in Waco. And so, what was cool is I listened to it, but I didn't hear the first part, which was where Trump actually he flew in on his kind of Air Force Trump One, landed right on the tarmac, got out. Evidently, he'd been playing golf earlier today, earlier that day. It was yesterday, I believe, was the rally. And he got out. He was in his more casual than usual, and he got out and he began. The music that played was that J6 song that
Yeah.
um, has just been recorded. It's Justice for All is that
Justice for all. Yeah.
calling it. So it was that number one song on iTunes. So it's a combination of our national anthem and the Pledge of Allegiance. And the J6 are singing the national anthem. I guess Kash Patel went in and recorded it with some other people at 9 o'clock. They sing it every single night. So they got it on record. And then President Trump was saying the Pledge of Allegiance, and they marry the two together beautifully. So that's what he came in on. So that was
Yeah. That's a great song. I purchased it, you know. I definitely want to add that to the collection. And also support. I guess it got number one on some other billboards as well, not just iTunes. Um, but yeah, that's it. A great song to enter in. And Matt Gaetz, he kicked off the rally, and Matt Gaetz has just been on fire as well, just doing really well, holding certain people, in investigation, holding their feet to the fire. And I've been really impressed with him lately. So I'm glad to see Matt's able to get out there and do that. But I know that, part of that rally, he talked about, this whole thing with the Alvin Biggs, the Manhattan, New
yeah.
York district attorney that seems to be going after him. Not seems, he is. I did actually a daily pause yesterday on it, and it was, it's very interesting how well, we should probably just cover that later. Let's continue on with it. But
He opened up the rally, didn't he? Trump, and the way that he can do is he brought the attention. He doesn't hide from controversy, does he? I mean, it's
no.
like right there in your face, and he addresses it. There are no elephants in the room with Donald Trump. He brought forth, I think it's actually probably a good time to address it, because he said basically that he shared there were two people in Alan Biggs' office that resigned because they were so anti what was going on in the DA's office. And then he gave a little background of Alan Biggs, and just share some of the facts maybe that you shared yesterday in your Bear Paws.
Oh yeah, basically Alan or Alvin Biggs, he came out on a platform when he was elected to be a DA, and the platform was, I'm going to get Trump. So rather than having a platform of, hey, I'm going to lower crime, lower violence, I've got these programs, rehabilitation, et cetera, and I'm going to be tough in the courts, his platform was, I'm going to get Trump. That right there should be a red flag for anybody on both sides of the aisle, because it's like, New Yorkers want to have a safe place, and they know it's not safe. It is at epic proportions. They're saying how unsafe it is to walk the streets of New York. And we see that because there's no consequence. There's no rule of law. You get away with anything, especially if it's politically motivated. So that was the first red flag. The other one was that his case is not a case at all. So what he did is, I guess he spent several months trying to find something, and he could not find anything. President Trump is literally clean on all these fronts, the taxes and all that stuff. And so he came up with an old case that was thrown out by the Department of Justice because of lack of evidence. They didn't know the intention, and it was all based on Stormy Daniels, that supposedly she had gotten hush money right before the 2016 election. Now, this supposed affair happened 10 years earlier in 2006. So it's kind of an old thing. But in 2016, allegedly, he paid $130,000. Actually, it was Michael Cohen that paid that. And so Michael Cohen was the one who instigated doing that, pushed for doing that. Some people think that Michael Cohen was the one having the affair and he wanted to
Mhm.
pay her off. And, Michael Cohen has a whole bunch of skeletons in his closet, and some are completely out. He got convicted of 9 counts of criminal behavior. One of those was lying to Congress. And so he's already disqualified
Mm.
himself as a witness. He's been disbarred. He's no longer an attorney because of his breaking the law
Yeah, that's
and
right.
disregard for the law. So he's really is not the kind of witness you would like. This is a guy that actually set up his own Twitter account, and it was Women for Cohen. And it would say something like,
Oh my
he's
god.
sexy, he's a pit bull, he's a,
Oh my goodness.
all sense kind of guy, and all this stuff, and it was all made up by him to
Oh,
promote
that is
himself.
that's pitiful. This
That is
this is one of the memes that was going around.
Oh, well,
Oh, well, the Patriots, when they start memeing, if you all you need to do is goad them a little bit, and they come up with some funny things.
that they do, and I guess she's bringing it upon herself, so it's sad to see that people chase money and they do anything for money, whether it be that profession or going after Trump, um, so what else was there? So statute of limitations.
Yeah,
So a state case, the statute of limitations is 2 years. It's 2016, so it would have ran out in 2018. So Alvin Braggs decides, I'm going to make this a federal case because it was a federal election that this money came from. And so that puts it to 5 years. But if you had 5 years to 2016, you're still at 2021. So it's past the statute of limitations. So really, he has an expired case, a case that was thrown out by Department of Justice because it didn't have enough. And his star witness is a known liar that went to jail for all kinds of tax fraud and lying to Congress. So I don't know what he's thinking. And then his own people within, like you said, two of his top investigators resigned from the investigation, saying, "Hey, we don't want anything to do with this." Even Alvanetti, who represented Stormy
yeah,
Daniels,
yeah,
he even said that the Trump defense team is going to just destroy Cohen.
yeah,
So even when your enemies speak in your favor, you're in good stance. So I look forward to it. And what it is, it shows that Donald Trump is a 5D chess player. He is 10 steps ahead. And so when they went after him, and they were starting to formulate, hey, we're probably gonna go in and arrest him. What did he do? He made it public. He said, oh, at a rally a week before, he said, probably Tuesday, I'm going to be arrested.
yeah,
Well, what did that do? It put everybody's eyes on Alvin Bragg. What? Are you going to arrest him? What on?
mhm,
What's the case about? What is your, and all of a sudden, so what it did is it kept him from doing that shock and awe like the Roger Stone. Roger Stone was early in the morning, they had like 20 cop cars,
mhm,
helicopter. Of course, they had CNN set up, camera crew before they even arrived. So somehow they got tipped, and they made this big spectacle. And so you saw Roger Stone in pretty much hogtied, his handcuffs, I think ankle cuffs, all this stuff. Some old guy, right? And he didn't even offer to go in. So what was that? That was all for show. And that's
yeah,
what Alvin Braggs was going to do to President Trump. He was going to
yeah,
show him in orange, cuffed, and the swamp creatures would rejoice with their evil snickers, and what happened? He deflated it. He beat him to the punch, and now the pressure's on him, and it's falling apart. So my hat tip to President
yeah,
Trump. He is a warrior and a
brilliant.
half. Yeah, brilliant guy, not afraid of controversy.
Yeah,
So
I mean, he started out this whole the rally, and this was his first rally for really the 2024 presidential candidacy. We heard him in a major rally back at CPAC, and he covered some of the same points, but there he was talking to young leaders and people of his party and encouraging them. But this was really it was the launch of his 2024 election as far as a campaign speech, an official one. And he just boldly came out and said, well, let's talk about the case that doesn't make any sense. And he went
yeah,
through all the things that basically he just went through. And then he said, now let's talk about the rigged justice system. And he said, this is prosecutorial misconduct. And he went into why he believed that. And, he just was really brilliant in the way he reminded his listeners where we are in problems that the Dems are bringing up and trying to slander his reputation, and how the FBI is colluding with Twitter and Facebook. He didn't leave anything out. He basically, well, it was a total reminder, and he did a lot of one-liners that kept us so we wouldn't forget the pain that we've been in the last 2 years and what exposure has happened. He basically said that if we don't choose differently in 2024, and he used these words, he said, America is doomed. And that includes shifting the way that we do elections. We've got to stop the steal, and we've got to stop the cheating. And so the first part of his whole speech was where we are right now. And he was confronting it. He was saying honestly, in this very brash way, that his New York style, which I think we've all gotten used to, and we realize, you don't want a milquetoast when you're dealing with the cabal. And he called them deep state. He called them demons. He called them some harsh names that felt kind of accurate, but that I wasn't used to that language over the air with a large crowd. And I think he's coming out boldly. And then he talked about the hits that he's taken. And he was saying, I'm taking the hits, so you won't have to take the hits. And then he shared, I can take it. And he talked about some of the things that he'd suffered, but he said, my family's taken a lot of hits too. And they had agreed to a lot of these things, but they have had to stand in this storm with me. But again, we're doing this because they're coming after you, and I will stand between you and them. So there were a lot of strong words from him. I know, were you able to listen to any part of it?
Parts of it, just the clips actually this time. It was a busy weekend for me, so I did not watch it in its entirety.
Yeah, one of the things he said that was interesting, he said, if I hadn't gotten in and if I hadn't stood up to China, we would never have known how dangerous they were, that there was a $600 billion a year deficit in trade deficit, that they weren't, that we were allowing them to kind of suck up our commerce. And he said, if I hadn't done a little of the tariff work that I did that required them to pay what they needed to pay, they just kept ripping us off, and they were ripping off our farmers. And then he shared, and he reminded the crowd what he did in his 4 years, that he got the farmers of our country, he said, $28 billion because of the abuse that they had taken. And then he said, Trump loves the farmers. And of course, he was in Waco, and that's partly farm country there. So you got a lot of your gun-toting cowboys and ranchers and farmers that were listening. I mean, they are people of the ground. They're the heartland of America. So he knows how to speak with the audience that's in front of them. You know, these
Yeah.
aren't just regular. They weren't the New Yorkers. They weren't the Wall Streeters. They were the Texaners. So he talked about the great parts of Texas that made our nation. He talked about the Alamo. He talked about the importance of the hardworking and the ethics that they have, and really their patriotic pride and how important it is to our nation. So it was just I was really very inspired by the whole rally.
It's interesting he had picked Waco because Waco was a stage for a major government overreach. I remember Attorney General Janet Reno, who had, had come in and taken out the Branch Davidians, and they wound up massacring them, burning them down.
Mhm.
And that was the first time I woke up to that. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe our government did that, And I saw a lot of tapes. That was back when it was on VHS. What was happening and what had happened to those people, and just the false narrative. They were all, stocked up with guns and actually technically they were within the legal rights to the amount of guns they had for the
Mhm.
amount of people, and I remember they saying, David Koresh claimed to be God, and, they really painted it as a wild cult, although it had cult tendencies. But, I saw the video where he actually said it, and it wasn't that he just said, you better not be fooling around with that girl. Otherwise the wrath of God's going to come on you. And I'm God, meaning like, I'm going to come down on you.
Right.
But
Like,
so they paint this picture and they begin
mhm.
to dehumanize the people. And then
Yeah.
the next thing you know, they come in, they have the standoff. But that's got to be in the memory of a lot of older people. Like I
Mhm.
remember when the government came and they wiped those people out. They may not have been the best example of citizenry, but they
Mhm.
didn't deserve to be wiped out like that. And so it's interesting that he picked a place like Waco.
Yeah, Sam Faddis did a great Substack last week on the strategic choice that, I'm sure Trump decides where he's going to have his rallies. So he does everything with deep pre-thought and tactical purpose. And Faddis, if you get a chance to go back and listen, actually don't listen, read his Substack. Sam Faddis. He was an ex-CIA operative. He's now in um, part of leading some of the patriots in the state of Pennsylvania to get back their state. But he's the real deal, and he brings from a CIA perspective what went wrong. And he was very clear that the bullets were coming from the outside in and not the inside out. That maybe the Waco group there was defending themselves, but it was a siege of over a month, and they were using CIA torture. They were using
Oh yeah.
sonic sounds that they were sending into the atmosphere of, they said, rabbits being killed and screams. And it was known kind of terrorist, how you drive a terrorist out. And several of the people in the compound did come out early, but then they actually brought in tanks,
Yeah. Yeah.
military tanks, and that they had these heavy weapons. And so it was just a very bizarre thing. But what happened was a fire started, and the narrative was that the people in the house started it. And it was quite evident after the fact that it wasn't the people in the house that started the fire, and it killed the women and the children. And basically, these people were burned alive.
Yeah, it looked like the video I saw 20 plus years ago was a tank, and at the tip of the barrel had a flame coming
Yeah,
out. I
that's
don't know.
right.
I mean, that's at least what I saw. I can't remember her name who put that video on, but But yeah, Sandra Thompson or something like that. But yeah, many years
So,
ago.
so anyway, that I think there were strategic reasons why it was in Waco. Here's a picture of Trump in Waco, and you could see the unanimous messaging of the troops behind him of witch hunt, and
Oh,
I
it's
think he was referring to this Bragg's case that Alvin, Alvin the chump or the chipmunk, Alvin was this DA from Manhattan, that it is and has been. It has been since he came down the escalator with Melania, a witch hunt from the very beginning. And so I found that was just a very clever photo that he had. CNN, it was interesting. Of course, he was taunting the press again, and he brought up the reality. He's speaking to the press. And he goes, "I see most of you have already turned off your red lights." Like they
right.
weren't going to film him. They refused to put him on prime time. But he mentioned the reality that CNN had the worst listenership that they've ever had in their history for prime time last week. That their ratings are just going down, down,
Down the
down.
tubes.
It's so he taunted them appropriately, and then he said, OAN and who are the other conservative private, OAN and Newsmax were there, and that their ratings were all going up, and so he encouraged his listeners and his watchers to support them. So it was really good after he basically went through what had been happening over the time that Biden's been in office. He shared, when I get in office, this is what I'm going to do. And I just wanted to read to you a couple of his plans, because he doesn't just complain about the other side. He said, I've got ideas. And this is when I get in office. He laid out solutions for a half an hour. And he said, I'm going to end inflation, this inflation nightmare, and build the economy like we had it before. And I'm going to reclaim our energy independence and dominance like we had a few years before. I'm going to make America the #1 energy superpower on earth, because he said we have more black gold under us than any nation in the world, and we need to access it. He said, I'm going to protect Social Security and Medicare, and I think that was a direct hit against DeSantis. I don't know the whole part because I haven't listened to a lot of DeSantis, but he mentioned that was anti-DeSantis. And then he said, this one I found very fascinating. I have a 4-year plan to phase out all Chinese imports to gain total independence from China. So I thought that was brilliant. That really was a good plan. And he said, I will hold the CCP accountable for unleashing COVID on the earth. And I will immediately sign new their orders that would cut funding from any school pushing CRT and transgenderism and other racial, sexual, and political content. And he said, I'll fight for parents' rights, including universal school choice and direct election of school officials by parents. And he talked about you should be able to fire the principal or the administration at a school if you don't like them. And then he talked about defeating the cult of gender ideology and reassert that God created 2 genders, male and female. And when he said that, I'll tell you, the crowd went wild, and they basically couldn't be held back, because you could tell these things were on their heart with what are we going to do? If we gone over the precipice and we're not going to be able to get back? So I just loved how he brought solutions. He said he'd revoke every Biden policy promoting the disfigurement of our youth, and he asked Congress to send him a bill to prevent child sexual molestation. So he really is about the children. It's always been about the children. And I think it's one of the reasons Melania, we haven't seen a lot of her. She's been going after many things under the waterline in child trafficking, and she's letting Trump be front and center right now. But their whole motive is they are deeply concerned about children.
Yeah. He also wants to keep men out of women's sports. I thought that was a really good one. And I think a one-day voting was another big plus that he was pushing. That could change just the structure of our country just overnight if we had one-day voting where everybody had a ballot and voter ID. I mean, could you imagine if we really knew who was voting instead of these cars full of boxes full of, midnight riders packing in the ballots? So, yeah, I was really encouraged by the just the answers that he gave, the solutions. It really sounded hopeful. It also sounded doable, and it sounded major. It wasn't like general. Sometimes a politician will just throw general things out there. I'm going to reduce inflation and I'll do that. He tends to say things that show how it would happen without giving too much. It's funny how everybody's copying what he does now. There was one this week. I can't remember now. TikTok. He was saying, "Hey, TikTok, we got to get TikTok out of this country. The Chinese are using it to pull in data off of everybody," and everybody just got on President Trump for that. Like, "Oh, you're a racist," because it's Chinese. And now what's happening? There's a European country that just got rid of TikTok
France.
for all government. Yeah, France it was. Yeah, you're right. For government employees, government phones and stuff, it has to be taken off of that. And so, people are starting to see, and it's like Trump was right again, over and over. When will these people learn that he knows what he's talking about? He's been around the corner. He's been around the block. He knows what's going on, and he knows how to handle these things. He's a businessman. And so, yeah, it was great. Definitely a great speech. I also talked about what China and Taiwan, lost a lot with the Ukraine, and, Ukraine, there's lots of people, hundreds of thousands of people that have been displaced and killed. And I don't think he said it was all Russia. He just said it was lost in that war, but then China and Taiwan are next, he was saying. He's been warning us about that. So will that happen? It'll be very interesting to see what the Biden administration, what their reaction would be. They're old buddies with Xi.
Yeah.
And so, are they going to look the other way? Are they going to stand strong, or are they just looking for that war? I mean, there's obviously an alliance, that was just made between China and Russia.
Yeah,
and
that's
Iran
so
as well.
bizarre. I mean, it kind of breaks the narrative, doesn't it, of being friends with China?
Yeah, it does. But maybe Putin and Xi want to take down the deep state. Maybe the deep state is the worst enemy of mankind right now, of all countries. And it spills over. It's not just one country. It's a bunch of elites. And wartime makes strange bedfellows.
Yes, it does. Yeah, what he said was the greatest enemy to our nation is not Russia. The greatest enemy to our nation is not China. He said the greatest enemy to our nation is a weaponization of law enforcement against the opposing political party, having an FBI that won't allow election change and the facts presented to the public. And then he went in that the greatest threat to our nation is having basically a political party that is against the people.
Mm.
And I mean, it was very sobering that he was very clear that the enemy is within. It's not out there. We can deal. He said, I can deal with negotiating with China. I can deal with negotiating with Russia. That's what I do. But the only way that we can take care of the deep, and he said, called them the deep state within us, as we have got to clean them out. And I mean, he was very clear about how that was going to happen. It was basically letting them know that they've got to get out of the positions in business, out of the positions in government, in schools, the border, all the places of influence. So I was very excited by this rally.
Yeah, and, it's got me thinking also, what am I gonna do this coming term of 2024? Am I gonna be a poll watcher, or maybe this time I might be a poll worker? So it just this speech alone has got me thinking, what can I do? And now's the time, right, to start figuring out. You don't wanna have it all filled, and they say, "Oh, I'm sorry, all our liberal friends have, filled in all those spots, and you
Yeah,
can't be a poll
right.
worker," but if you had a bunch of people that were poll workers, you're actually a poll watcher and a worker at the same time, right? Because you would be
Mhm.
behind lines, seeing the people on your right and your left, and if you see something funny, you can call it out as a poll worker.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's so good.
so
Yeah,
that's now's the time to start thinking about that. Start looking at your local county, your local cities, and see, how you can get into that position, because they're not hard to get
yeah.
in. From my understanding, is to be a poll worker.
No, I took the training locally. We're here in Santa Cruz County. You just call and sign up with the county election department, and they contact you, and you go in for training, and then you show up on the days that you volunteer for. So
Yeah.
uh, yeah, I mean, there's a lot with the elections going on right now. Did you notice that Carrie Lake she got one win in her election with the Arizona Supreme Court? She got a win, and she got a lot of pushback from the Supreme Court. But one things that she got had to do with signature verification,
Yes.
validation, and basically she had three whistleblowers that came forward during immediately after the election, and during the trial, that jury trial that they had, the judge wouldn't allow their testimony because he had some sort of ruling, and the Supreme Court found that his ruling wasn't right, because how could she have known ahead of time that she would have to have these testimonies? And so basically, the election office officials that were whistleblowers, they reached out to Lake after the election, and they urged her team to review the signatures. So they basically said, you might want to look at this again. And so her team did review it. And they said they knew that Maricopa County was willfully doing some things against the law and against procedure, that they ignored some things willfully, and that these three whistleblowers were in official capacity for the election office, and they actually set aside over 130 ballots and said that these signatures do not line up with the criterion that have been set. And so what they noticed was somebody upstream from them let all of the signatures except for 17,000 go through. And so it was a significant amount of signatures that went through, because Katie Hobbs, she only won by 17,000. And so now the
Mm.
Arizona Supreme Court is allowing this process of signature verification to be challenged and looked at, and who knows what that's going to do.
It was a major win, but you wouldn't have known it had you listened to the fake news, because they said most of Carrie Lake's points were knocked down. and they focused in on that. I heard, I don't know who was doing it, but I heard the reports from the fake news, and it was just like, oh, it was such a spin. I
Oh,
mean, it's so
wow.
pathetic. So I guess it doesn't really matter what's reported. It's what matters is what actually happens. And so if this
Yeah.
goes to court and it goes in her favor, then there'll be time for people to say, I told you so, and then they can go back to all those reports and say, remember when they said this? Remember when they said that? Well, they were wrong. I'm looking forward to that day, and I know it's coming. I know it's coming. I could feel it. There's a lot of people in the prophetic that feel it as well. I just I'm looking forward to that day. But we need to carry on, carry that torch, and hold strong, and not be dissuaded, and not be
Yeah.
discouraged. With every battle, there's ups and there's downs. But you know what? It's no matter how hard it is, we can't give up. That's the thing. We cannot give up
Yeah.
because what's the alternative, right? There is,
Well, we're getting little wins too along the way, and
more
they're
and
not
more.
going to be so small when they come to the fullness of light. And we got to remember that the fake news is fake. So we don't want to use those as our hope source, do we?
No, I mean, if you look at just where we're at right now, I mean, just looking at things, and comparing it to 2 years ago, what's the difference? Most people don't trust the news, even both sides of the aisle. People are questioning. If you look at these polls, the majority of people think, hey, these polls, they took a poll about this whole thing with the Alvin Braggs versus Donald Trump, and 76% said that either Trump will come out favorable or it won't make any impact. So
Oh,
that's like 3-1 saying, hey, you know what? It's either positive or neutral, but it's not going to damage him in any way. And you're always going to have those never Trumpers over there because they
yeah.
they vote what they want, and so you've got that. So the media is discredited. I mean, look at the ratings, right? CNN's the lowest it's ever been in prime time since it's been around. I mean, that is a major thing. People are saying we're done with you. That's a major thing. You look at all the things that Trump has overcome. You had what? Russia, impeachment hoax number one, impeachment hoax number two, the Mueller investigation.
Yeah.
I mean, over and over and over, and it just keeps going. The whole
Yep.
Stormy Daniels, the first one. I mean, she wound up having to pay him
Yes.
twice, attorney fees and all that
It
stuff.
might be 3 times,
It
although I
might be
think,
3 times, yeah,
yeah.
3 times the lady, huh?
Oh my goodness.
But,
Yeah, and then there were all the uh the unclassified documents supposedly that were taken. I mean, it's
yeah,
just been
Mar-a-Lago,
a
and
whirlwind. He has gotta have so much resilience and,
he's got a
wow.
lot of prayer. There are a lot of
Yeah,
people praying for him, and, I watch ministries, and they pray for him all the time. And I think that's where the power and the strength comes from is people are behind him, people are praying, and the Holy Spirit comes in. He may not be the biggest saint or know scripture inside and out, but God has used certain people for certain tasks. He used Samson, right?
yeah,
Samson made him strong. Samson had, some rough edges. David had rough edges, right? I mean, he fell in lust with a woman, and he unjustly had killed a man, or had a man killed, her husband, but yet he had a heart after God. He was willing to be used, and God used him. Moses, same thing, right? Moses got angry, and
yeah,
he did some things. He actually killed someone himself, and but God
yeah,
used him. The Apostle Paul, he used to kill Christians. I mean, he'd hunt them down, but he knew the word really well, at least not with wisdom, but with knowledge and memorization. And the Lord's like, I could use that guy. And he winds up using the guy that was so knowledgeable about what the words of the scripture said. And with his spirit, all of a sudden he began to understand. So, he's using Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a businessman, a rough man. He's been in rough neighborhoods. He knows how to wheel and deal and confront. He's not a little ivory hand, soft hand person. And, oh, what should we do? He is a strong man. So God's going to use him. And, whether Christians like it or not, there's some that don't, and there are many that do. They're seeing
yeah,
what God is doing, and God's going to use whom he uses. You know, it's our self-righteousness that points the finger at people saying, "How can he be used?" You know, his I don't like his tweets or, you know, he has had a
He's
past.
mean.
Yeah, he's mean, you
We're
know?
talking about people who torture children and traffic children and, our cartels and mafia. He's mean. You
Yeah,
know?
what do you want? You want that or you want that? Or you want nuclear war? Or do you want mean tweets? I mean, you know, it's just and so he's a fighter, and that's what they're not used to it. They are not used to it, you know? And even the justice you find in the scriptures, boy, if you did some of that justice today, you'd be like, "Wow, we are so I don't know what it is, but tempered down that, you know, nobody wants to send anyone even to jail anymore. It's like, "Oh, let's rehabilitate them. Let's educate them and just, you know, let them out. House arrest only." I know he only murdered 3 people, but they weren't that
Goodness.
important, you know, that sort of
Yeah,
thing, and it's just like, you know
very
what?
strange.
We need
Yeah. Well,
rule of
even
law.
Huckabee came out, Huckabee's pretty, he's a gentleman, and he said, "I'm endorsing Trump," and he said, "I don't care if you don't like the way he talks," and so he was really clear to the conservative Christian coalition that stop worrying about, he's not your pastor. He wants to be your president, and you need a strong leader. We are trying to stay out of wars. We're trying to negotiate with very difficult people. We have very difficult problems. And so I really appreciated that Huckabee came out um, and made an assertion of supporting Trump early in the race so that we can kind of move forward. Let's get past that whole argument. That was kind of
Yeah.
last time people thought, well, he's just not very nice, but who cares?
Yeah.
He's nice to us. He actually is very what he's doing. It's not nice. It's full of love and protection. He's zealous for our nation, and he makes it very clear he will stand between us and our enemies.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm glad he's the man, and I'm endorsing him early. So
Yep.
there's no doubt
Me
about
too.
who I'm going to be voting for.
Yeah. You know, the other thing that's in his advantage now that it wasn't a couple of years ago is the whole thing with Twitter and Elon Musk. You know, Elon Musk, you know, in just the short amount of time that he's had it, he's reached over 500 million plus active users. You know, this is where the battleground of thought is, right? I mean,
Yeah,
you could go to Parlor or True Social, and you know, it could be an echo chamber, but there's where the battle is. You know, and apparently, it's become the most downloaded #1 news app. He's removed the child pornography.
yeah,
That was a big, huge thing. You know, he
huge.
exposed the truth through the Twitter files. He's removed a lot of the censorship. You know, the censorship was a huge thing. I mean, you know, we all know conservatives that were kicked off. Well, now if they're not kicked off this next time around, think about the advantage of news that's going to get out there,
Yeah,
even during the the primary cycle and up to the election. You know, he reduced the bots. You know, how many people were fooled by bots? You know, it's like one person says, "I like Trump," and you get 25 almost the same thing saying, "Oh, you're evil, you're stupid, you know, he's a white supremacist." And find out those are all bots. You
yeah,
know, one person represents hundreds, and the poor person that said I'm voting for Trump says, "Oh, I'm such a minority. What's wrong with me?" You know, everyone else must know because there's so many hundreds of people, you know, telling me how wicked I am for supporting Trump, only to find out it's just a bunch of robots, you know, and just one guy with an agenda portraying himself as thousands. You know, they said there's
yeah.
over 9 billion posts that were done by like 5 people, and
What?
that was their job. Yeah, it was a number of months ago. We covered it in our show, just a news blip, but that's what they do. They were bot farms, and they were huge, like one of the biggest, and they were responsible for literally swaying things. And they said, yeah, we've had over I think it was 9 billion posts throughout all social media. You know, and what it would be is it would go viral. You know, and the bots would just go and go and go, and it would repeat, repeat,
Yeah.
repeat, and slight changes and stuff.
They were all the bots were following Biden.
Yes, yeah, and they
He
were, and
had an
so
incredible bot farm.
oh, yeah. I mean, literally thousands of machines that just crank these things out, change a little bit, crank it out again. And so, you know, you have all these people, you shut those bots down, and all of a sudden you don't have all these thumbs ups like, "Oh, you're wonderful, Biden. That was a great speech, best thing I ever heard." Yeah, and then you find out he was only talking about ice cream. Speaking of that, um,
Ooh.
that we had a shooting today in
Mhm.
a Christian school, which broke my heart. I mean, 3 children. It was elementary to 6th grade, and then a janitor,
Mhm.
and then 2 like administrators, and they were killed. 6 people were killed,
Yeah.
and it was by a trans woman, so a guy that was or became a woman, and he actually went to that school when he was a child. And so, to me, it is really sad. He may have been harboring stuff. I don't know what's in his mind, but he wrote a manifesto and he went to that school purposely. And so it was premeditated, and he picked that school out. And I have a feeling it's that maybe he has holding hurts and he focuses in on, these poor kids, they're
Yeah.
innocent kids. They were all 9 years old that got killed,
Mm.
and,
That's a
it,
good
it was
grade.
interesting because I wound
Mhm.
up doing
Mhm.
going into a study because I thought that's just really weird. What 28-year-old woman would shoot up a school? That doesn't sound like something a woman would do. I'm not saying they can't do it. I've just never heard of it. And so it made me do a search on it. And I found this study that was done in Sweden, 2018. And the study suggested that actually trans women exhibit a male pattern of criminality. And what they found is if you compare a violent crime, a trans woman to a man, they were almost the same. It was like 80%, zero point 0.8. Where if you had compared a trans woman to a regular woman, the trans woman was 18 times more likely to commit the crime. So
Than a woman.
than a woman. And if it was compared to a man, it was zero point 0.8. So it had 80% of it. It was almost a 1-to-1 to a man versus 18 to 1. Um, and so
Wow.
it was very interesting.
That's
It
strange.
just Yeah, it was called Fair Play for Women. That's the website, and they had done this study, and it was very scientific the way they did this study. They went just yeah, it was they were very careful about it. They didn't have agendas, and they eliminated some things. It was very scientific, at least what I had read on this thing, and it was quoted a number of times in other publications as well.
Well, it's
So
almost like a bullying attribute of, lording over. I mean, I'd always thought of trans women, men who wanted to become women would be kind of effeminate, and they were kind of milky toast, and they just wanted to be in a quieter type of lifestyle. But I mean, this sounds like, when violence comes forth, I mean, it's kind of like, what kind of guy becomes a woman and then goes into women's sports and beats the dickens out of them in a wrestling match? I mean, that's weird to me. But
yeah, there's just something, broken. And, we just got to pray for them. I mean, there's a lot of hurt. And I don't know if there's an imbalance with chemicals or if it was a trauma that happened, but something happened. And I personally don't believe that it was God's design. It even talks about the men becoming effeminate is not something to be done. And so all I could say is, we have to love them and care for them because they've probably gone through. I mean, they have a high rate of suicide. I mean, just to feel like you're not your own person. So I feel for them. I don't feel for this particular person because of what they did, and I think they should throw the key away.
well,
And
the police shot the individual's dead.
That's right.
So
Yeah,
it happened in Nashville, um, and the school was a, K to
Presbyterian
6.
Covenant.
Yeah, so they're just, and it was a small Christian school. It wasn't like a 2,000 high school. It was a
Yeah,
small grade
200.
school of kindergarten to 6th grade, and, just a very sad story that this would happen. So she was shot by police, and, so that, the tale is kind of done as far as her part, but the school will be suffering for a long time. The trauma those children had to go through and the terror and the confusion.
So watch this. This is how Biden addressed this issue today. So let me just play that.
My name is Joe Biden. I'm Dr. Joe Biden's husband. And I ate Jenny's ice cream, chocolate chip. I came down because I heard there was chocolate chip ice cream. By the way, I have a whole refrigerator full upstairs. I think I'm kidding. I'm not. God. Ben, how are you, pal? One of the best guys in the United States Congress, Ben Cardin.
You'll hear the Fox commentator on
Folks,
this. Just another minute.
It's a delight to have you all here. And who are those good-looking kids back there?
Gosh.
Your kids, all four of them? Well, stand up, guys.
Watch how they react.
John, we'll jump back in here. Considering the moment,
we were told that
the shooting that just happened left 3 children dead, 3 adults dead, shooters dead, and we were told he would be addressing this off the top.
Yeah, it's rather surprising. I thought that a somber President Biden would have come to the podium here and addressed the school shooting from the White House.
Yeah. So
that is so bizarre,
isn't
oh
it?
my goodness.
That burned 46 pounds in 2 weeks. If you are struggling,
still,
it's okay. That's
yeah,
okay. He had
bizarre?
it's very strange. He had another kind of bizarre thing happened in over the weekend when he was addressing, it might have been like Friday, the Parliament in Canada, and he was up there. It was just so strange, and here he is representing our nation to Canada, and he basically says, I want to thank China for I can't remember why he was thanking him. There was I can't even remember why it was up there, but it was so strange. And then he realized he was in Canada, not thanking China, and he goes, oh, I mean Canada, not China. I mean, it was not good.
They were all laughing at him. I mean, how embarrassing for this country to have someone that's just completely lost their mind. And, it's almost like a Freudian slip, thinking China. He probably thinks China so much. It just accidentally came out, with another country that starts with C, But
yeah.
Just, anyway, that's kind of a wrap up of some of the things, we've had during the week, but very embarrassing.
Yeah, well, we just want to ask God to be comforting those families in Nashville tonight, and our hearts are with them. Lord, would you just pour your spirit out on them, and we just say thank you that you are watching over America, God, because you are the hope of this nation, and we ask that you continue to keep President Trump in strength and in his strong warrior spirit.
Amen. That's right. Amen. So good night, and we'll see you on the next Wake the Bear.